Today, we're staging a mass debunking of those commonly called billionaires, people whose wealth turned out to be no sturdier than a house of cards in hurricane season. From Silicon Valley geniuses to sellers of non-existent nations, this collection of characters will boost your self-esteem better than any therapist. Get ready. You're about to see for yourself that being poor but honest is much more honorable than being rich through lies, Photoshop, and pure audacity. Let's go. Elizabeth Holmes, the founder of Theranos, spent years convincing the world she had created a revolutionary device. Her Edison machine supposedly could perform over 200 medical tests from just a single drop of blood from a finger. Investors, charmed by her, the reality was funnier than any stand-up routine. The miracle machine worked worse than a broken toaster. Inside the sleek casing sat terrified lab technicians who were secretly pouring blood into standard Siemens analyzers bought at a local store. Holmes was a billionaire, only on paper, an icon of progress, a magazine cover girl, until it all came crashing down. As it turns out, to achieve a real medical breakthrough, it's not enough to just stop blinking and speak in a deep voice. Today her net worth is zero, and instead of a penthouse, she lives in a federal prison cell. Talk about a drop of blood that finally broke the camel's back. If you thought modern startup founders were too bold, you clearly haven't met the Scotsman Gregor MacGregor. In the 1820s, he suddenly announced he had become the ruler of a magical country called Poya in Central America. He described it as a utopia, rivers full of gold, incredibly fertile land with 3 harvests a year, and locals who were practically born to serve Europeans. The British aristocracy, tired of the rain, fog, and oatmeal, rushed to buy land and currency for this fictional nation. MacGregor raked in an amount that would be worth billions today. The only problem? The country didn't exist. The first ships of settlers arrived not in paradise, but in a malarial swamp and dense jungle. Most investors didn't even survive the journey. Meanwhile, MacGregor casually moved to France, where he even tried to sell Poye a second time. Now that's what I call an entrepreneurial spirit. Nikola founder Trevor Milton decided he was the new Elon Musk, only cooler. He promised the world a revolutionary hydrogen-powered truck that would change logistics forever. The company's stock soared, Milton became a multi-billionaire, and investors were in ecstasy. Then a minor detail emerged. In the promotional video, the truck wasn't moving because of hydrogen, it was moving because of a downhill slope. Engineers simply towed the prototype to the top of a long hill and pushed it down. The entire technology was based on the fact that objects rolled downhill. Milton sold investors an inclined plane at the price of a spaceship. Ingenious? Yes. Legal? Absolutely not. Victor Lustig is the true Elvis Presley of the con artist world. In 1925, he read in a newspaper that the Eiffel Tower was rusting and that its maintenance was costing Paris way too much. An ordinary person would think, that's a shame. Lustig thought, sold! He forged government documents, invited 5 major scrap metal dealers to a luxury hotel, and secretly informed them that the government had decided to dismantle the tower. He chose the most insecure businessman, André Poisson, and convinced him to pay a bribe to win the tender. Lustig grabbed a suitcase full of cash and fled to Vienna. The funniest part? Poisson was so ashamed of his own gullibility that he didn't even go to the police. Feeling completely invincible, Lustig returned a month later and tried to sell the Eiffel Tower a second time to a different dealer. Audacity level, legend. Christophe Rocancourt is a real-life chameleon. This French fraudster moved to Hollywood and pretended to be, get this, a member of the Rockefeller family. Yes, he spoke with a heavy French accent, but he explained it by saying his mother was French. And you know what? That was enough. He lived in a luxury estate, married a Playboy model, and swindled millions from wealthy suckers by promising to double their investments. His secret was laughably simple. He never directly asked for money. He just displayed luxury, paid bills with other people's cash, and hinted at his supposed connections. People practically begged him to take their funds. He proved that greed shuts down critical thinking faster than a shovel to the head. We continue gutting bank accounts that never existed. Hang on tight. The level of absurdity is rising. If the previous stories were just about bold people, these next ones are true artists who painted zeros on their accounts using the power of imagination and Photoshop. This guy with the "I just stuck my fingers in an outlet" hairstyle became the youngest billionaire in crypto history. Sam Bankman-Fried slept on a beanbag chair in the office, drove an old Toyota, and preached effective altruism. His philosophy was, "I'll make all the money in the world just to give it to the poor." Investors were moved to tears. In reality, his exchange, FTX, was just his personal piggy bank. Effective altruism turned out to be a convenient cover. Sam stole customer money to buy penthouses in the Bahamas, pay for private jets, and sponsor politicians. When the bubble burst, it turned out that the accounting for a multi-billion-dollar company was being handled in a messaging app with disappearing messages. This financial genius didn't even know where $8 billion went. I guess it fell out of the leaky pockets of his cargo shorts. This was Robin Hood in reverse. He took from the poor to live like the rich, and people only stopped believing him when it was far too late. Thanks to Netflix, we know him as the Tinder swindler, but the scale of his nerve deserves its own Oscar. Shimon Hayut, his real name, pretended to be the son of diamond mogul Lev Leviev. The scheme was brilliant in its simplicity. He would take a woman on a first date on a private jet. Naturally, she would lose her sense of reason. But the catch was that the jet was paid for with the previous victim's money. It was a classic Ponzi scheme, but instead of stocks, he was selling romance. At a certain point, Simon would start sending panicked messages. "My enemies are after me. My accounts are frozen. I need cash to disappear." And the women took out loans to save their prince. Effectively, he was a homeless man living in five-star hotels at the expense of women in love. He proved that the greatest enemy of a woman's wallet isn't inflation. It's the Cinderella fairy tale. WeWork founder Adam Neumann convinced the world he wasn't just renting out office desks. No, he was elevating the world's consciousness. He walked barefoot around the office, drank tequila during meetings, and banned employees from eating meat to save the planet. His company was valued at $47 billion, even though it was losing money faster than a drunk sailor in port. The peak of his madness was selling a trademark to his own company. He renamed it the We Company, and then sold the rights to the word we back to the company for $6 million. Think about that. He sold the pronoun to his own loss-making business. In the end, he was kicked out, but he left in style with a golden parachute worth $1.5 billion. He is likely the only person in history to become a billionaire by failing at absolutely everything he touched. We can't skip the classics. Charles Ponzi didn't invent the pyramid scheme, but he made it so attractive that we named it after him. In 1920, he promised investors a 50% profit in 45 days. Supposedly, he was buying international postal reply coupons in Europe for pennies and selling them in the US for dollars. It sounded smart, complex, and boring, perfect for a scam. The truth was that to cover the initial investments, he would have had to buy 160 million coupons, but only 27,000 actually existed in the world. He paid old investors with new investors, money, bought mansions and gold pens, while being technically bankrupt from day one. When he was arrested, he had less in his account than the cost of a decent lunch. But what did it matter? He had sold people a dream, and along with it, a one-way ticket to poverty. Dr. Ruja Ignatova, wearing glittering dresses and bright red lipstick, would step onto the stage at Wembley Stadium and shout, "One coin is the Bitcoin killer." People screamed with joy and handed her billions of euros. She promised a financial revolution. There was just one tiny problem. Her cryptocurrency had no blockchain. None. No technology at all. The numbers on users' screens were just entries in an Excel spreadsheet that administrators could change at will. It's like buying canned air, only to find out the can doesn't exist either. When things got heated, Ruja hopped on a plane to Athens and vanished. To this day, no one knows where she is, either at the bottom of the sea or with a new face in some corner of Dubai. A woman who sold nothing to the world for $4 billion. This Nigerian guy was the living embodiment of social media success. Rolls Royces, private jets, enough Gucci bags to bury a small village. He called himself the king of real estate. His followers thought he was a brilliant developer. The FBI thought otherwise. It turned out Ramon Hushpuppi was just an internet scammer sending phishing emails to companies and stealing money from their accounts. He even tried to steal 100 million from an English football club. The funniest part is that his own vanity was his downfall. He loved bragging on Instagram so much that the police easily tracked his location using geotags in his photos, even from his dinners. The lesson is simple. If you're stealing millions, maybe don't post a selfie with the caption, "Look at what a rich fraudster I am." Imagine you're an investor in Florida. A Saudi prince, Khalid bin al-Saud, comes to see you. He's wearing a Rolex, driving a Ferrari with diplomatic plates, and promising access to the royal family's oil and gas pipeline. Naturally, you melt and hand him suitcases of cash. In reality, the prince's name was Anthony, and he was an orphan from Colombia, adopted by a family in Michigan. For 30 years, this man played the role of a sheikh. And do you know what finally did him in? It wasn't a security background check or international verification, it was bacon. At a business lunch, he happily stuffed himself with pork. The investors suspected that a devout Muslim prince pigging out on bacon was something new. As it turned out, his royal wealth was built on credit cards and the ability to keep a straight face. He proved that if you throw on a robe and some sunglasses, people will believe you're Santa Claus if you say so. In the 90s, a Canadian company called QuadrigaCX announced it had found the largest gold deposit in history in the jungles of Indonesia. Stock prices skyrocketed. The company was valued at $6 billion. Geologists, bankers, pension funds, everyone wanted a piece of the pie. But there was one catch. There was no gold there at all. The chief geologist, Michael de Guzman, was simply taking samples of empty rock and filing down his own gold wedding ring into them. When the ring wore out, he started buying gold flakes from local miners for pennies and mixing them into the samples. A billion-dollar industry, hundreds of experts, auditors, and they were all fooled by a man with a metal file. When the scam was exposed, de Guzman, quote, conveniently fell out of a helicopter over the jungle. I guess even gravity doesn't like liars. Have you seen the movie The Wolf of Wall Street? Well, the money to film that movie was provided by Jho Low, a chubby guy from Malaysia who spent millions on parties with Leonardo DiCaprio, gave Paris Hilton cars, and bought up Van Gogh paintings. Everyone thought he was a brilliant investor from a wealthy family. In fact, he just gained access to Malaysia's state fund, 1MDB, and siphoned out $4.5 billion. Essentially, he stole money from Malaysian taxpayers to fund a movie about how scammers rip off investors. The level of irony is off the charts. Jho Low is currently on the run, likely in China. But his contribution to world cinema and New York bar culture will live on for ages. Sir Alan Stanford, yes, he literally bought himself a knighthood, was an icon of success. He'd fly into cricket matches on his own helicopter, throw millions at sports, and run the Stanford Financial Group. He claimed his bank on the island of Antigua gave incredible returns on deposits because he was a financial genius. Spoiler alert, he wasn't a genius, he was just paying old investors with new money. And the funniest part came out when the FBI raided the Stanford financial office. It turned out the bank's massive assets were a plot of land in the middle of nowhere that he valued at $3 billion, even though its real price was a couple of million. He literally blew a soap bubble out of dirt. Today, he's serving a 100-year prison sentence, and unfortunately, there are no helicopters provided there. Think you have big credit card debt? Meet Jérôme. This French trader at Société Générale was a modest guy from the provinces, but he desperately wanted to be cool. He started making risky bets on European markets, hiding them from management, using forged reports and his knowledge of the internal security system. At one point, he got so carried away that he opened positions worth 50 billion euros. That was more than the bank itself was worth. When the market turned against him, the bank panicked and started a fire sale. The loss totaled 4.9 billion euros. The court ordered Jérôme to pay back that amount. To clear the debt on his salary, he would need to work for 170,000 years. That's an absolute record for turning office plankton into a financial black hole. We have to mention the king. Bernie Madoff wasn't just a fraudster. He was the chairman of the Nasdaq Stock Exchange, a man with a flawless reputation. For decades, his fund showed steady profits, even when the market was plunging into the abyss. The entire investment fund was located on the 17th floor, accessible to only a few people and an old computer from the 70s. They were just printing fake statements on a printer. No trades ever existed. $65 billion. Those were just numbers Bernie made up while sipping coffee. He lasted so long only because no one could believe a man of his stature was a common thief. It turns out, the more expensive the suit, the fewer questions people ask. In the 1920s, a Portuguese man named Alves Reis realized one thing: counterfeiting money is hard and dangerous. It's much easier to convince everyone you work for the central bank. He forged a contract from the Bank of Portugal and went to London, to the very printing press that officially printed Portuguese escudos. He claimed, "We need a secret batch of money for the colony in Angola. Print it." And they did. Real money on real paper with real watermarks. Reis brought suitcases of cash to Lisbon, totaling 1% of Portugal's GDP. He founded his own bank, issued loans, and even tried to buy a controlling stake in the actual central bank to fire anyone who might expose him. Genius. He wanted to buy the police with stolen money so they wouldn't stop him from stealing. Just 10 years ago, Eike Batista was the richest man in Brazil and 7th in the world. His net worth was estimated at $30 billion. He said, "I'll overtake Bill Gates. Just give me 5 minutes." His oil company, OGX, was drilling wells, and Eike swore on his life there were oceans of oil down there. Investors believed the tanned macho man who parked his Mercedes McLaren right in the living room of his mansion. But when the real drilling began, it turned out there was no oil. There was sand, there was water, there was ambition, but zero oil. His empire collapsed faster than the Brazilian national team in the World Cup semifinals against Germany. From a man who had 30 billion, he turned into a man who owed $1 billion. That's what you call negative success. Now he knows. Real oil isn't what's in the presentations, it's what actually burns. In the 80s, America was in awe of a young genius. Barry Minkow, while still in high school, founded a carpet cleaning company called ZZZZ Best. By age 21, he took it public, and the company was worth $280 million. Barry was on magazine covers as the symbol of the American dream. The problem was that the only carpets he was cleaning were in his imagination. 80% of the company's revenue was made up. He created a fake empire by borrowing money from the mob and paying off old debts with new ones. To fool auditors, he once rented a massive office building for a couple of days and brought in actors to pretend they were working feverishly, making calls on disconnected phones. It was pure Hollywood. But instead of an Oscar, Barry got 25 years in prison. Sarma Melngalis was a New York icon. Her raw food restaurant, Pure Food and Wine, was a mecca for celebrities. Alec Baldwin and Woody Harrelson chewed on kale leaves priced like prime rib. Business was booming. But then Sarma met a man named Anthony. He convinced her he was a secret special ops agent who could make her dog immortal. Seriously. But there was one condition. For the dog to become immortal and for Sarma to join the pantheon of gods, she had to pass tests. The tests consisted of transferring millions of dollars from her restaurant business to Anthony. She stole from investors, stopped paying her employees, and went on the run with Anthony. They weren't caught by intelligence agencies, but by stupidity. While being wanted, the vegan queen ordered a Domino's pizza. The cheese and dough gave her away to the police. The moral: if someone promises your dog immortality for cash, buy the dog a bone and yourself a brain. Usually, con artists forge paintings. John Drew went further. He realized that experts don't look at the painting itself, but at the documentation. He hired a talented artist to paint fake Matisses and Chagalls, while Drew handled the provenance, the history of ownership. He infiltrated the archives of prestigious London museums, the Tate, the V&A, under the guise of research. While the librarians were having tea, he slipped forged pages into old catalogs. He was rewriting art history, creating a past for his own paintings. Experts saw the records and said, "Oh, this is an original." It's like photoshopping yourself into Brad Pitt's childhood photo album. Billy McFarland sold the world a dream called Fire Festival. It was supposed to be the most elite party in history. Pablo Escobar's private island, supermodels, yachts, villas, and tickets for $100,000. Instagram exploded. When guests arrived in the Bahamas expecting paradise, they didn't see villas, they saw soaked relief tents for refugees. Instead of haute cuisine, they were served a cheese sandwich in a styrofoam box. It was like ordering a Rolls-Royce and getting a scooter with no wheels. Billy managed to scam the richest kids on the planet, making them fight over dry mattresses. The only thing he organized perfectly was the class action lawsuit against himself. Nigerian prince emails are a classic everyone laughs at. But Emmanuel Nuda didn't write emails. He walked into a bank. In the 90s, he introduced himself as the director of the Central Bank of Nigeria and offered the head of a Brazilian bank a chance to buy a brand new international airport in Abuja for $242 million. The banker transferred $242 million for an airport that didn't exist. Nude received installments for 3 years until the truth came out. The site of the international hub was just an empty field with a few goats. Emmanuel proved that if a lie is grand enough, people are afraid to check it, lest they look like fools. This Italian guy, Raffaello Folieri, realized there is no brand stronger than the Catholic Church. He came to New York and claimed to be the official financial agent of the Vatican. Supposedly, the Pope himself had tasked him with selling church real estate in the US at great prices. He wore robes, carried massive crosses, and even hired nuns to create atmosphere in his office. Everyone believed him. Even Anne Hathaway, who lived with him for 4 years, thinking she was dating a devout billionaire. Folieri spent investor money on private jets, hotels, and luxuries for his Labrador. The Vatican eventually said, "We have no idea who this man is." Folieri went to prison, and Hathaway had to return all the jewelry. Holy simplicity. In the early 20th century, Cassie Chadwick pulled off a stunner. She walked into a lawyer's office, accidentally dropped a $2 million promissory note signed by Andrew Carnegie, and whispered, "Don't tell anyone, but I'm his illegitimate daughter." The lawyer, of course, told everyone. Banks started competing to give Cassie loans. After all, the richest man in America was supposedly backing her. She took millions, lived large, and told creditors, "Father will be upset if you demand payment." The scam lasted 8 years. Not a single banker called Carnegie to ask, "Hey, do you even have a daughter?" When the truth came out, Carnegie wasn't angry. He was impressed by her sheer nerve. Jerry Cotton founded the crypto exchange QuadrigaCX. He was the only person who knew the passwords to the cold wallets containing $190 million. Everything was going great. Jerry was getting rich, customers were trading, and then he went to India to open an orphanage, and suddenly died. Along with him, the access to the money died too. $190 million turned out to be locked in a digital vault underground. Later, it was discovered that the wallets were empty even before his death. His death, if it was real, became the most convenient way to escape bankruptcy. You know the Backstreet Boys and NSYNC. They were created by Lou Pearlman, but the music was just a cover. His company, Transcontinental Airlines, existed only on paper. He sold shares in an airline by showing off a fleet of blimps and planes made of toy models. For 20 years, investors gave him over $300 million, charmed by his success. In reality, there were no planes, only pictures of toys in the brochures. The money from the Ponzi scheme went to the boy bands, and the money from the boy bands he stole. Justin Timberlake reportedly cried when he found out his producer was the king of castles in the air. In the early 20th century, George C. Parker sold tourists the most famous buildings in New York: Madison Square Garden, the Metropolitan Museum, and the Statue of Liberty. His main trick was selling the Brooklyn Bridge. He sold it twice a week, posing as the owner and complaining he was tired of managing the bridge. The price varied from $50 to $5,000. The police regularly had to kick off new owners who were building toll booths to collect fees. Parker proved that if you have a document and enough audacity, you can sell even the ground people walk on. Sam Israel III raised $450 million by promising returns from a secret program that didn't exist. The growth charts were literally drawn in Microsoft Paint. When the FBI cornered him, he faked his suicide. An SUV left on a bridge with the words, "Suicide is painless," written in the dust on the hood. While the police were searching for a body in the river, Sam was hiding out in a trailer park for seniors, and he couldn't stop calling his girlfriend. He eventually turned himself in. He ran out of battery and patience. The moral: no matter how much you steal, you'll still want to chat on the phone. So, there you have it. 33 proofs that big money loves silence, only because loud talk might attract the police. These people lived the dream, at your expense. We've deconstructed the pseudo-geniuses, fake princes, and sellers of thin air. If someone promises you a mountain of gold, they're probably trying to sell you a broken shovel. Remember, these stories are the urban legends of the financial world. Stay sharp. Which scam did you find the most ingenious? Want more intellectual fuel? We have deep dives into historical myths. Like, subscribe, and protect your wallets.